You already know what time it is. Welcome back into the NFL with AJL, episode 83. We are live on a Wednesday. You could have been anywhere else in the world, but you're right here tapped in with us on the show. Hope you guys have had a great week and a great December so far. We are 2 weeks away officially from Christmas 2024. Hope you guys have been getting your shopping done. Hope you guys have enjoyed the holiday season. Maybe gotten out and checked out some Christmas lights, took advantage of the Black Friday sales, whatever your festivities may be. Hope it's blessed and safe for you all. As always, before we get started on the show tonight, you guys please make sure to like and share the stream wherever you may be watching. Subscribe on YouTube, of course. Hit the bell so you never miss a post. That QR code there in the corner of the screen is every bit of social media and podcast content. If you can't find the show, you simply aren't looking hard enough at the NFL with AJL. Again, y'all make sure to like and share the stream. Make sure to tell someone about the show before we jump into the madness tonight, as we do have a loaded one. We're going to tell you why the College Football Playoff Committee did actually get it right with putting SMU in over Alabama. It's not rocket science. It was written in the rules. We just have to look a little further and not try to make a talking point about every little thing. And then we're going to review the SEC, ACC, and the Big Ten championships. Going to have Alan jumping in at the end of the show for the AA, of course, so we can chop up that entire CFP bracket and, of course, that talking point of SMU over Alabama. So y'all get in the chat, get in the comments. Again, thank y'all for getting on the show with me as we're live tonight. And we'll take it right from the top as Georgia beats Texas 22-19 in the SEC title game to punch their first round bye ticket in the first ever 12-team college football playoff format. And when you look at the box score in the first half for this game, it wasn't very pretty for Georgia. You would have expected Texas really to have won this game. They doubled Georgia in time of possession, 20 minutes for Texas, 10 minutes for Georgia. They doubled them in first downs. They doubled them in plays ran. 42 plays ran for Texas in the first half against Georgia, half of those coming in Georgia's territory. They outgained the Dogs by over 200 yards. They held Georgia to under 60 yards in the first half. We know that has to be a historic low in the Kirby Smart and maybe even in the Bulldogs football program era in general. And Carson Beck was injured on the final play of the first half. So nothing was going Georgia's way in this one. It was just not very good for the Dogs. And you knew that this was going to be a defensive battle with Georgia playing against Texas here, because we know that both of these teams have some of the best. Of course, I forgot to send the link to Alan again. Had some of the best defenses in college football coming in. We see with Georgia playing in some of the games they've had over the season, and we've seen Texas against Texas A&M also. Texas against Texas A&M in some of the prior weeks too. So I didn't expect there to be a whole lot of offense in this game. I really didn't. And, we would have liked to see more offense, no question about it. But I said coming into it, this was going to be a kind of 21-17, 21-20, maybe even a 17-14 type of game. And it was exactly that type of football game. I got to say, Trevor Etienne being able to play in this was absolutely huge for Georgia. He scored twice in some pivotal moments, and as always, provided that presence on the ground game for the Dogs. I mean, he had a huge run at the end of the third quarter, and I think without that play from Trevor Etienne, with some of the touchdown plays he's had throughout the season, and especially in this game, Georgia would not be where they're at right now in this season. Now, unfortunately, Georgia's secondary continuing to get gashed. We saw it in the Alabama game. We saw it in the Ole Miss game. We saw it even in the game against Georgia Tech, and now we see it in this game against Texas as well. Of course, Quinn Ewers throwing for over 300 yards in this game. And, we just see that secondary getting gashed again for the Dogs. We have these opposing offenses really getting whatever they want through the air, catching us in space. And I mean, Matthew Golden had a big day. DeAndre Moore did as well. Both of these guys over 100 yards. And when you get caught in space like that, when you have these big plays given up, it gets hard for your defense to actually lock in, for them to actually play as a unit, have that confidence in each other. Their play. I want to see the continuing to be led up by Georgia, because this team has national championship aspirations. And now that they have that number 2 seed, that first round bye, the fans are bought in. Some people have been thinking I'm kind of crazy, too much of a homer, saying this year that Georgia has a chance to win it all. And they've got as good a chance as anybody. When you go down the teams in college football, everyone's got flaws. And Georgia is as good as anyone. They can beat anyone. They can hang with anyone. And you have to snuff up your defense, which is a strong suit of your team, if you really want to be able to go the distance. Now, Texas's defense, as well, as we know in this game, was absolutely great. They were showing up, completely stalling Georgia's offense, and then the play calling was again bad. Starting off for Georgia, that's going to have to be something that changes as well. And it's not necessarily easy when you're playing against a defense like this, and when Carson Beck does go out, and now you have your backup quarterback who you don't necessarily probably have the best or even biggest, most expansive game plan for. But the play calling has to be better. There is no excuse about that for Mike Bobo, because, again, this team has national championship aspirations. And I don't say that because they're only in the playoffs, because Alabama had national championship aspirations coming in. I say that because of the way that they've played and the way that they've been tested all year long. It wasn't the prettiest all game, really, offensively for Georgia. And once Gunnar Stockton came in, it was just a matter of how creatively could Georgia really run the football. And Georgia's doing what they've done all year after, the way that the first half was. You go in, Kirby Smart gives his halftime speech. The paint peels off the walls as he talks to the players, because Georgia came out sluggish. They made some insane halftime adjustments. Returned from the locker room. They fight their asses off to win these difficult games in the third and fourth quarters in these second halves. Texas held the ball for 8 minutes and 11 seconds out of 30 possible minutes in the second half, after holding the ball for 20 minutes in the first half. So Georgia's defense completely tightened up. And again, this is why this team is built to win. This is why this team is built to be your 2024 college football national champions, because they've been tested, they've been put on the road, they've been put to the brink of defeat with the schedule, against a Florida, against a Kentucky, against a Tennessee, Alabama, Ole Miss, Texas, now Texas again. Yeah, that's just 8 games that Georgia played this year, against Georgia Tech also. I feel like there might be a game or two on there that I'm leaving off, but we've seen this Georgia team be in the trenches in dogfight games, to where it comes down to being outcoached. It comes down to making that one play. And Georgia was able to do it again. They hold Texas to 129 yards in total. In total in the second half, after giving up 260 in the first half. So more than chopping in half their time of possession and chopping in half their yards offensively. Even though, yes, the game did go to overtime, and even though Georgia did give up 260 yards in the first half, it only amounted to 6 points. I don't care what anybody says. That defense is speaking volumes for the Dogs. Now, of course, penalties really hurt Texas in this one. Sark had something to say about it at the half. I'm not really here to have a discussion about referees again in the umpteenth game, in the umpteenth season of any type of football, whether it's college or professional, in the NFL, because these refs are bad. Okay? I didn't see any calls that I thought were drastically missed that really changed the outcome of this game, but it affected Texas. They had 8 of them in the first half, plenty of holding penalties. They had missed opportunities, specifically field goals in this game as well, that just plagued them. And that's why they weren't able to come away with the victory. Their O-line manhandled again by Georgia. Another 6 sacks from the Dogs. Texas was running all over Texas A&M last week with Wisner. I think had over 150, 160 yards in the game. Wasn't happening against Georgia. They absolutely shut it down. And what more can you say about a Georgia team that completely takes away your best move offensively? They might not be able to be the best offensively for you. I feel like we kind of have maybe some Michigan Wolverines vibes here lately, especially this year. Great defense. Offense is okay to carry you through enough. You've got enough players to make plays. But Georgia taking away the run game from Texas is very remarkable. Now, we have Gunnar Stockton come in, of course. plays in the second half, leads Georgia to a scoring drive right out of the gate. Love to see that. The kid playing with absolute heart. He's got wheels to extend plays as well. So you love to see that as well, extending those plays when it's needed. He had the throw, 2nd and 7 in the third quarter on the run to Lawson Luckily. Lawson Lucky barely got his toe in on the sideline. I mean, the broadcasters were amazed by the play that was made from not only the quarterback but the tight end as well. And Lawson Lucky might have also saved this game with a touchdown saving tackle after Gunner threw the pick. Way to cut the defender off and really keep him from eating up all the green grass to go and get that pick six. It was, still very disappointing offensively for Georgia. Again, I understand Gunner Stockton, your backup quarterback coming in. He probably doesn't have a lot of snaps, first team reps. Does he really know the playbook and really have a lot of that hands-on live game action? And that's just simply a no for a guy like Gunner Stockton, who's at Georgia sitting behind Carson Beck. And you can only, really only run the ball creatively in the second half. There wasn't much confidence in Gunner passing. Yes, he did have some decent plays, but it was again about how creatively could Georgia run the football. And there's just virtually no passing attack. And I hated to see that because, again, the initial reports early on for Carson Beck are he's not going to play in, this first playoff game with whoever we, get in 3 weeks coming out of the bye, whether it's Indiana or Penn State. So that's going to be something to be seen there. Love the fake punt from Georgia. Kirby Smart rolling the dice, and it absolutely pays off. A little questionable for Texas also, with them only having Arch Manning in for 2 snaps of the entire game, one of which was he was a decoy to a direct snap for the running back on 4th down. Very nice play, by the way. I think everyone that was watching TV actually took note of that in a playbook, whether they do or don't coach football. That was just something very nice to see. And then overtime comes around. Again, Georgia has been tested. They just played in an 8 overtime game the week before. You hold Texas to a field goal. Gunner Stockton putting his absolute body and soul on the line to try and win it all. I mean, the kid, I know what he felt. He saw the goal line. He said, that is my team's ticket to a first-round bye. That is the SEC trophy right there. I'm running straight forward to it. Gets his head clipped off. He has to come out. I think he could have personally played through the rest of it, but per the rules, he has to come out, which I understand. Probably best for him for his safety. So then you have Carson Beck coming in. I mean, Hollywood couldn't have wrote it any better. Carson Beck comes in, arm dangling, and I'm literally sitting there talking to my buddy Carlos. I'm like, this has to be a handoff. Like they're not putting this ball in the air. Carson Beck is handing this ball off. Trevor Etienne takes a handoff, scores a touchdown for a guy who was questionable to come into the game. I mean, just the ultimate definition of resiliency for a college football team. And it's going to be very interesting to see how Georgia, goes through the rest of this game and gets through into, these deeper rounds of college football because Carson Beck isn't believed to be playing in 3 weeks as of now. So what are we going to see from Gunner Stockton? But y'all get in the chat, get in the comments, please, and thank you. Let me know what you think of the SEC championship as Georgia does survive Texas 22-19. They punched that first round bye in the first ever 12-team college football playoff bracket. Oregon beats Penn State 45-37 as Oregon wins the Big Ten in their first season after Oregon beat Penn State by 1 in Oregon earlier in the year. I told y'all on the channel that Oregon was the king of the Big Ten. And everybody pushed back, but a few of you in the comments, and they said, okay, if they're not, serve up your nomination. And here they are. They won the Big Ten. They went undefeated. They are the number 1 seed in college football. So there's nothing more you can say about Oregon not being the king of the Big Ten for right now in 2024. But I will give all of the respect, all of my kudos. I will eat crow on my Penn State take for this Big Ten championship. I thought Penn State was the most outmatched team of the weekend, and they've earned my respect. Penn State, James Franklin, I apologize. I was dead wrong about how this would go. I expected Oregon to win this one handily. I mean, at least by 14 plus. I just thought Penn State was, again, the most outmatched team of the weekend. I haven't really been impressed by them all season. Now, of course, that offense, it can get high flying with Andy Kotelnicki, and we did see some of that in this game as well. But when you look at games like this game in certain moments with a couple of interceptions from Drew Aller, wide receivers only having 2 catches through 3 quarters, and in the Ohio State game as well. Yes, they did play, 2 of the 3 best teams in college football, one of them being at home, and one of them being on the road, or excuse me, one of them being in the Big Ten championship. But I still haven't been that impressed with Penn State throughout this year, but they did impress me in this game. And I expected Oregon to win this one handily, and it was a shootout, and Penn State was driving down the field until they threw a pick in the closing moments of the game. So I have nothing but respect for this team. I will absolutely eat crow where it's deserved. You guys can see a video on the channel. Penn State football is boring and overrated, and that's the name of the video. And some of you guys just, absolutely got on me about it, which is fine. That's my opinion. It's on the channel. You guys can check it out. But in this game, they proved me wrong. And it was absolute shootout. I mean, no defense in this one. It looked like Oregon really was going to run away quickly in this one. They're up 28-10 pretty quick. Then they pulled away 38-24 in the middle of the third quarter. And Penn State 100%, they're looking at the 2 interceptions that were thrown by Drew Aller in this game. One was basically a pick six. Oregon returns it to the 1-yard line. And then the other one was to end the game when they were driving to possibly win the game. It was a nice way for the DB to pin the wide receiver to the sideline and basically come down with the ball as if he were the receiver. Just a really nice textbook, coaches that coach on Sundays for football. And yes, I'm speaking of the NFL. They love to see plays like that. Scouts love to see plays like that. And again, through 3 quarters, we saw this in the Ohio State game. I can't remember the exact stat, but it was something like wide receivers and tight ends only had like 6 catches in total on the day. And then you have this game here through 3 quarters. Penn State had 2 catches from wide receivers. And I'll even go and look through right here. Yeah, and the fourth quarter is where all of the catches from their wide receivers came from, because they still, finished out with some receptions from good parts of the the position cores and all. But when you can't have completions to your skill position players in big moments and just routinely throughout the game, that's not a recipe for success. And that's something else that we saw here with Penn State. I mean, we remember the Ohio State game. Their leading rushers were a quarterback who was hampered, who was injured coming into the game. And their leading receiver was tight ends and running backs. So I don't know what it is about this year for James Franklin, Andy Kotelnicki, big games, and Penn State being unable to have the offense click when they needed to. Amari Evans, 22-yard touchdown that was well designed from Andy Kotelnicki, of course, and then Harrison Wallace, the third, had a third down grab. That was it through 3 quarters. 2 catches from your wide receivers. Then, of course, Wallace ends up scoring late. But for most of the game, Penn State receivers, non-factors, just like in the Ohio State matchup. And then you look on the other side with Oregon, Tez Johnson absolutely running through Penn State secondary, 11 catches, 181 yards, career high in yards for Tez Johnson, and he had a touchdown. This offense is electric with Tez Johnson in that lineup, and he wasn't the only one open either. Dylan Gabriel has Tez Johnson. Evan Stewart was quiet on the day. Of course, there's Trayshawn Holden as well, who can get involved in the mix. And we just know that Oregon, a lot like Texas, is just speed, speed, speed. A lot like Miami, just a very, very speedy offense. And when you look at a Heisman candidate like Dylan Gabriel, a guy who is a very good quarterback, one of the better ones in college football. And shout out Oregon for being able to put together this string of the Justin Herberts, the Bo Nixes, and now it looks like it's going to be the Dylan Gabriels of the world. It's absolutely great to see. And Oregon fans are expecting this to be the year, for this to be the first year that they can actually go and win a national championship, because we know the Marcus Mariota years of the past weren't able to be successful there. These Oregon fans have been hanging on. They got a great young coach in Dan Lanning. They're undefeated in the first year in the Big Ten, winning the conference. Great roster from top to bottom. They've got high expectations. And when you got guys like Tez Johnson and Dylan Gabriel, and again, Dan Lanning and even Uiagalelei on the defensive side of the ball as well, this team is arguably the best in the country. I mean, I'll say it. I love my Dogs, but Oregon is the best team in the country. All right, back on the rails here. Penn State outgaining Oregon in this game, 518 to 466. That's a season high in yards that Oregon has given up defensively. And I do think that's another concern as well. Will Oregon, in the harder side of the bracket, which we'll talk about later in the show, will Oregon, in the tougher side of the bracket, actually be able to handle if they get into a shootout with a Tennessee, if Tennessee can do that, if they'll get into a shootout with an Ohio State, kind of like they did early on, will they be able to hang with a Clemson or a Texas if they're going to catch them potentially? Because we know how that, can shake out as it's going to go forward throughout the bracket. And then they gave up 292 yards rushing as well to Penn State. I thought that was just kind of flat out embarrassing from Oregon. So they got to do better in that aspect. Drew Aller, though, I thought he hung with Dylan Gabriel all game long. He accounted for 4 touchdowns. But the difference was Oregon had no turnovers, while Penn State had 2. Of course, those 2 interceptions from Drew Aller. So again, I was dead wrong about Penn State. I'll totally admit that. Penn State played pretty well in this game outside of the turnovers. Again, I do think that Andy Kotelnicki and James Franklin could have planned a little better to get more of your skill players involved more often, especially when they need to, because Oregon is one of the best in the country at doing that. And when you're in the Big Ten playing for that first round bye in that Big Ten championship for this playoff format, you just have to be much better. I don't think I see you guys in the comments. Not sure if it's working on my end, but if you are in the comments and I don't see it, just keep commenting. It's still going to work on my algorithm. Sometimes, it just doesn't work for me on the other end for Restream. Clemson upsets SMU 34-31 on a 56-yard ACC championship record field goal to win the conference. They're back in the college football playoffs for the first time since 2020. First ACC championship in a couple of years. We know that they're familiar with this feeling, though. They clinched the first ever controversial, which we'll talk about here soon, 12 seed in the college football playoff bracket. Despite what the rankings said, Clemson being at 17, now being the 12th seed, and SMU being 8. I just felt Clemson really was the better team coming into this football game, jumping out to a quick 14-0 lead, less than 5 minutes into the game, and there's a strip sack on SMU's first drive where we're 45 seconds into regulation, and a wide-open touchdown pass to score immediately for Clemson. And Dabo Swinney, Cade Klubnik, Clemson Tigers have jumped out in front in the ACC title game. And then you got a guy like Kevin Jennings coming along, really being a playmaker in this game, scampering away for the first SMU touchdown in this one. But, he's got to learn to get down, really throw the ball out of bounds in regards to the awful interception he threw in this game, really, which could have been the difference maker in this one. As SMU, again, they only lose by 3. They mount the amazing comeback by 3 possessions, really a couple of times in this one to get back into it. And if they could have had that possession, things could have looked, very, very differently. So you maybe can pin the loss on that play alone, but we don't like to think like that necessarily. The Clemson wide receiver, Bryant Wesco, 142 yards, 2 touchdowns, 8 catches, all career highs for him, all career best. So clearly the biggest weapon for Clemson on the day. And Clemson took the chance. They succeeded. They made it a 3-possession game. They're up 24-7. After making the field goal, they could have been up 24-7 previously when they missed the kick. Then they go up. So at that point could have been up 27-7. Biggest lead of the day would have been by 20. Don't know if SMU would have came all the way back. I believe that they would have, because they did it kind of twice in this game, when they were down 24-7, and then when they were down 31 to 14. Kind of clawing their way back, not getting too far out of it. And Kevin Jennings and Cade Klubnik kind of going back and forth. I thought the quarterback play for both of these guys was pretty solid. I didn't like to see a guy like Kevin Jennings throwing the ball 50 times. I thought that was a little risky when you take a look at the coaching staff and how they put together that game plan. But he did stack up some nice plays in the third quarter. There's a big time throw to the wide receiver Daniels, and then the fake quarterback run before he tossed the touchdown to the running back Smith. Made it a 10-point game at that point. Of course, he had the touchdown run earlier in the game, the nice scamper away for the first one for SMU. And then the final touchdown pass to tie it at 31 was just absolutely beautiful throw on the run. All 3 of his touchdown passes came in the second half, so arguably the most important part of the game. He had 2 touchdown passes in the fourth quarter. And again, he accounted for 4 total touchdowns for SMU in this one. And I liked what I saw from Cade Klubnik as well. He played a little bit of a cleaner game, in his play. I think all season long, the skill set really showed in this one, how he was able to, really perform in the ACC championship and just hold it down for Clemson as they get the win. But it wasn't necessarily easy because Clemson's up 14-0, 24-7, 31-14, and SMU's just still not going away. And they outgained Clemson in this game. They had more first downs, but Clemson won the time of possession. They won the turnover battle. Of course, the ugly interception. No, was it an interception? I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I know that Clemson won the turnover battle. So, that's the major part. There was the strip sack on SMU earlier in the game. I feel like there was another turnover, but I can't put my brain on it specifically. But even then, as it's getting towards the end of the game, you think, okay, it's destined for overtime. But Clemson, Adam Randall, he returned the last kickoff over 40 yards. To give Clemson a shot at getting into field goal range. Cade Klubnik, he hit Antonio Williams, 17 yards and a first down. Mustangs are on the 39-yard line. On the Mustangs 39-yard line. There's 3 seconds to play. Nolan Hauser with the ACC record, 56-yarder to win it. It was just a classic. It was a classic in a championship game. And it was a great watch. It was great TV. And again, some people are going to be caught up about how these rules have played out, and Alan and I are going to talk about that here in a few minutes for the bracket discussion. But just Clemson, they had a great game plan to get down there and really make sure that SMU was not going to be able to win the ACC in this occasion. Clemson's running back, Phil Maffa. I think he's got to get healthier. If he's able to return to his old self. And if Clemson really wants to have a shot for that offense to click all playoffs long, he has to return to his own self. Let me say that. Their defense really has to tighten up. They almost choked away this ACC championship, as much as I hate to say that. So their running back, clearly, if he can get healthy, I think it'll just be, it'll pay dividends for them. And we've seen when that running back is healthy, this offense is just clearly on another level. I don't think there's any real question about that. When you go up 24-7 though, and then you're outscored 24-10 in the second half, it's not a good recipe for success. I know that Dabo Swinney knows that. And again, they're in the toughest side of the bracket because they're bracketed over there with Texas, Ohio State, Tennessee, Oregon, and Arizona State. So, none of those guys are really going to be laydowns, especially with someone that's got a first round bye. So it's going to be definitely having their work cut out for them, and we're going to see what Clemson is really what Clemson is really capable of here. Alan should be jumping into the stream soon, so we'll take our time a little bit, hit this sponsor break. Again, guys, I'd love to see you in the comments. Keep commenting if you're in there. This has been episode 83 of the NFL with AJL and the Double A, which is coming up here soon. I appreciate everybody jumping into the show tonight. You could have been anywhere else in the world, but you're right here tapped with me on the show. Y'all, please make sure to like and share the stream. Again, wherever you're watching, subscribe on YouTube. Please help us push towards 1,000 subs on the channel. Hit the bell so you never miss a post. Also, please tell somebody about the show. Share that stream. And of course, that QR code. Every bit of social media and podcast content. If you can't find us, you're simply not looking hard enough at the NFL with AJL on all social media platforms. And of course, as always, we're sponsored by Buy and Sell with AJL for all your worldwide professional real estate needs, whether you're looking to buy a home, sell a home, or invest in real estate. Buy and Sell with AJL is the worldwide real estate team that you need to be tapped in with. You can get on their monthly newsletter, their monthly neighborhood market reports as well. And you can even join their real estate meetups that they have recently started. Go learn how to invest in real estate, network with people at a high level. Your network is your net worth. I'm sure as many of you people know. So it's a great community to be able to be a part of. And as always, we are sponsored by PrayStation Online. At PrayStation Online, use code AJL at checkout. Again, it's the praying hands with the PlayStation. Praying hands with the PlayStation layout, so you can never forget. I actually messed up and deleted the graphic by accident. But here is the logo live in front of you. The best gaming and faith collaboration you could think of on the planet. Again, they can put that logo on anything. They can put it on a hat. They can put it on any type of apparel, any type of clothing. Waiting for Alan to jump in here, so we'll go ahead and take off on what's it called? The bracket, as we did get the final rankings for the college football playoffs. Again, at PlayStation Online, use code AJL at checkout. The best gaming and faith collaboration out there. Should be jumping in soon. There he goes. All right, and jumping in as always, the other half of the Double A, we're going to be chopping up the first ever official 12-team college football playoff bracket, discussing the format, the rules now that it's played out, how we feel about everything, predicting the bracket, talking about SMU over Bama. What's good, my brother? Nice to have you into the show. Can you hear me? Trying to get tapped in? You're good. Take your time. All good. We'll wait for Alan to get adjusted here. He's in the show.
All right.
Boom. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Sweet. Sweet. How you doing tonight, man? Good to have you in.
Hanging in there, man. Ready to get into the show. I'm excited.
I know, that's right. We got a nice one stacked up. We just went through some of the conference championships, so we know we've got you tapped in, locked in for the final CFP rankings. So before we pull up the CFP rankings, let's talk about how Alabama was rightfully left out of the dance, of the bid. Before I take the floor and give my spiel on it, how do you feel about SMU being over Alabama? Did it make sense to you? What are your takes there?
Made absolute perfect sense. Better team isn't really necessarily the answer here. It's what did you do in the season? And SMU delivered all season long. They lost one time to a decent opponent in BYU at the time. They were ranked. And then they get to the ACC championship and fall short because they didn't make the necessary strides they needed to make early on. But I think the committee made the right decision here because, number one, I don't think they wanted a repeat of what happened last year with FSU. And number two, how are you going to put a 3-loss team in the playoff, especially when you had 2 ugly losses, like really ugly? You're supposed to be Alabama. You're supposed to be, that team. You beat Georgia, and you lost 2 that you couldn't afford to lose, and Tennessee and Vanderbilt. So that's where I stand with it. I think they, made the right call, the right decision. SMU is deserving to be in that playoff because, they're a great team.
Yeah, definitely think SMU is deserving to be in it as well. I like all the points that you make. One thing that I want to address, because I think it's kind of funny that, more than anything, this thing is being a talking point. And of course, we understand it's a new playoff, it's new rules. People are kind of wondering how it's going to play out. Yeah, we knew that the 12 team was coming around, and the initial thought was, oh, it's going to be easier, right? We're going to see a lot more teams fairly get in, this, that, and the third. But realistically, with the way that these rules are, it explains perfectly why SMU got in over Alabama. The point that I want to address first, though, is, some people saying, oh, well, they only put in SMU, they manipulated what they would have originally done because they left out Florida State last year. And I just think that's the furthest thing possibly from...
That's not true.
Right. I think that's the furthest thing from the truth, man. I don't think SMU made the bid because Florida State missed last year. I don't think SMU's second loss, which came in that conference championship game, should have counted against them. And the committee came out and said that it wasn't going to. It was very simple why SMU was in over Alabama, because if you were an idle team Why should an idle team get a chance to jump ahead of someone who played? Because if you're an idle team in conference
Exactly.
championship week, you're not playing in the game because you were not high enough in your conference.
Right.
So if that team loses, you're not going to slide ahead of them, because in that aspect, you're devaluing the conference championship game.
Exactly.
And in that case, SMU could have went out and said, well, we're not going to play either way. Because if we're
Yeah.
going to get penalized for playing, then we're just not going to play so we can guarantee our playoff spot. That does show a hole, a flaw in this system, but it's not rocket science why SMU got in over Alabama.
No,
Yes,
it's not.
Alabama had the better strength of schedule, but Alabama had two horrible losses. They
They
had
did.
two horrible losses
That's
that
what
they
kept them out.
absolutely looked blasphemous in. And yes, maybe right now a lot of people will agree that Alabama is the better team than SMU, but not at the right times.
Mm-mm.
Not in the eyes of how these rules are and what the committee and how they rank them at the certain spots, to where, Alabama shouldn't have even been that high up in the first place. They didn't even
No.
drop much, it felt like, after they lost to Oklahoma.
Mm-mm. They really didn't.
So just a little just a little crazy there that this was actually a talking point. People are like, the SMU coaches advocating as to why they should, get a first round bye, and is the committee going to manipulate to get the ACC in? And just, there were so many talking points and actual segments, and I'm like, it
Why
just
is this a
shows that
discussion?
people. Right. It showed that people, they just didn't understand the rules yet. And I can
Yeah.
get that. Again, we were all learning when we did our first 12 team of the year. We were like, okay, who's going to be the top 12? I had Miami at number 12. That's not even really possible.
Right.
I mean, yes, it could have been, but the ACC, more than likely, except for this year, they're going to be a top 4 seed. So maybe they could have been 12, but we understood how it played out and everything like that. So I'm glad that's on the table for everyone to kind of understand there. Now, before we pull the final seedings up, how are you feeling about the format with the final seeding, the bracket now? Some people saying the conference championships are being extremely overvalued, that they should have just seeded the field. What's your take now that we had a 17 jump to the 12 and a 16 jump to a first round bye? That's, I think, the big discussion that everyone in America is looking at.
Well, I want to take it back. I want to wind the clock back a little bit, because remember when the 4 team was brand new, right?
Yep.
Everybody was like, oh, win your conference, win your conference, win your conference.
Yep.
Okay. And then we saw later on, oh, wait, you don't have to win your conference and you can still sneak in. Like the year Alabama got in and Ohio State arguably should have been in,
Right.
Now, so are conference championship games undervalued or overvalued, or are they right? And I think that's a debate that's going to be continued all throughout this season, next season, just for the simple fact of, like you just said, Clemson being 17, winning the ACC championship. I believe we discussed this. What if, Clemson shakes everything up and it
Did.
falls? And yeah, lo and behold, it happened.
Yep.
And not discrediting Clemson, they're a good football team. They really are. I mean, they've grown throughout the year. And they had that ugly loss to South Carolina, but I don't think South Carolina is as bad as the media paints them to be either.
Not at
I
all. You
mean,
very well could have put South Carolina in that spot where Alabama was at.
exactly. If they were 10-2, bro, they could have won. I mean, they were that one loss away from to Alabama from being in that playoff. I would die.
I'm glad
on that
Georgia
hill.
didn't have to play it this year. I'll tell you that, because
Yeah,
South Carolina showed to be a little sneaky to the Dogs over the last, 5-6 years. I mean, remember
and
the game with Jake Fromm, couldn't hit the field goals,
they
held Georgia out of a top spot.
Yeah, they absolutely manhandled Texas A&M. So I don't think they're overvalued. I think they're right where they need to be. I think you give a team like that a shot with that format.
Right.
You give a deserving, worthy team a shot because they won their conference championship. If it is a major conference. Now, with the Pac-12 coming back, that's going to be a little bit different.
Right.
It depends on who joins and, what it's going to be about. But we already know Washington State and Oregon State are going to be there. So,
Yep.
but yeah, that's pretty much my take on it. I think it's right where it needs to be. I think it gives an underdog team
Yeah.
a glimpse to get into the playoff, and that was Clemson this year.
Right. That was Arizona State this year.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And they're deserving to be in there if anybody is.
Right.
Because they absolutely boat raced Iowa State this past weekend.
Yeah, they did. Could probably have not made a worse pick on the entire 2024 football season than taking Iowa State over Arizona State. Yeah, I like your take a lot. I do, because I agree that it does give, an underdog team a chance to actually get into the bracket. But I think the point that I've kind of understood now is I respect conference championship games, okay? SEC, ACC, Big Ten. You might start to lose me maybe around Big 12, Pac-12 now. Before, absolutely. But, of course, everything always shows up a little later than it needs to, especially when you really need it, right? And this 12-team playoff a few years ago would have benefited us a lot.
Oh, absolutely.
I think when you put the floor on the fact that you can't be moved down after losing on conference championship weekend, like, you're automatically protected. So you're kind of already telling a team,
right,
if you can be top 12 and make your conference championship game, really, if you're above the 10, you're going to make it in if you lose. Now, unless there's craziness, Alabama at the 11, Clemson wins, they bop in, they slide them out. That's where everyone's freaking out. Why would Clemson why would SMU be in if they just lost? Alabama did not play in the conference championship weekend. So you have people getting upset thinking that the conference championship is overvalued. I think with what it's going to possibly turn into now with situations like this, because I'll be honest, Alan, I don't know if I really like seeing an Arizona State or Clemson that was so lowly ranked that didn't play well enough to get to an actual top 12 best team like this committee said they're going to give to us. And then they get into this dance in a conference championship game. And I'm not complaining for the Ole Misses or the Miamis or the Alabamas or the South Carolinas out there, but it's just for the sole fact of the rule, And I think what we're going to see now is, I think sooner than later, they're going to really try to make it as much like the NFL for playoff seeding as possible, because it's either going to go back to the BCS or it's for the way that they calculate it. They could still call it the CFP, whatever, but using those same standards.
Use an AI algorithm,
Right. Or they're going to go to, we're going to have divisions. 8 people win their division, you're in. Rightfully so. Then there's going to be 6 teams, 3 in each conference, that are in the dance to make it in, with like another 3 teams in the hunt. Because when you go from taking clear-cut rules to now we're going to allow for human error, strength of schedule, top 25 wins above 500, it gets a little
convoluted.
Yes, and I mean, just to be very candid, the casual fan cannot grasp the thought of a committee. And in a way, I don't blame them, because why should a specific group of people, because of whatever sets of rules that they're going to apply and say that they believe in strength of schedule and clearly they don't, why does that have to be the way to dictate it? So
they can just flip-flop a team tomorrow just based off how they're feeling.
Right.
We saw that.
Yep. And you got people complaining like, oh, when teams in the top 12 lost, they dropped an average of 6 spots. But after they lost on conference championship weekend, they only dropped 1 or 2 spots. Yes, because the way that it works is they take the 1 through 4 and the 12, and then everyone that was in there, they just get seeded. So if you're at the bottom, you're going to get pushed out. Let me ask you this. Do you think in, let's say, next year, they're like, forget conference championships, we're just going to seed the field as the top 12? How do you feel about that?
I would be a little disappointed, but I wouldn't be like infuriated, really. I'll tell you this. If SMU would have been a rank lower, Alabama would be in here right now. if they were a little bit lower when they lost, I think
Uh-huh.
Alabama would be in.
Right.
I genuinely feel that in my gut
If
because
Alabama would have been ahead of SMU, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it'd have been a clear and cut. Oh well,
Whoa,
Alabama, you know,
because
well,
Alabama was ahead of
they
Arizona
were
State and Clemson, who jumped
they
in.
were
And that's
trying so hard to get them in there. They were looking for a loophole, and they
right.
could not find it. They could not find it. We talked about this with brand bias. Now, at least with Arizona State, they have only 2 losses, and they were quality losses, and they won their conference championship by a country mile.
Uh-huh.
So it's not hard to seed them fourth. Granted,
Right.
their rank doesn't show that, but let's see how it is when we get to the quarterfinal game with Texas or Clemson
Yep.
and see how they play against them.
Yep.
Because I don't think they're rolling over.
Right. Let me tell you a really interesting part to where it really shows how broken this system could end up being. So in other sports, right? When you play the best and you have the best record, you win your division, you win your conference, you are the top seed. So when you step into the playoffs, you are going to be facing the lower competition first. So at the end, you have a chance for the best to play the best.
Mm-hmm.
The way that the college and I don't think the CFP, there's no way that the CFP committee could have thought this through.
No.
Because with the
No,
way
they
that the
didn't.
college championships, the conference championships are done now, or the way that they're valuing the conference championship games, putting the floor to where you can't be moved on that weekend if other teams are idle. Oregon, if you take a look at this bracket, look at the insane degree of difficulty that the best only undefeated team in Oregon who earned the number 1 seed and a first round bye, look at their path to the college football playoffs over the other side of the bracket. Oregon
There's
would
some
have to
bench
go through
pressure.
Tennessee, Ohio State, Texas, or Clemson.
Yeah.
While Georgia, you can argue, has a fucking landslide to walk through the national championship, if you ask me.
Notre Dame being the biggest threat there.
Right, for sure. But I'll tell you today, Alan, as a Georgia fan, I'm like, I would have much rather taken the 2 seed, bro. You're telling me I got to dance with SMU, Penn State, Boise State, Indiana, or Notre Dame, arguably to get to the Natty? And I'm going to see one of the powerhouses on the other side. I don't know. I just think Georgia fans, they got to feel good.
Right.
They got to feel good being the number 2 seed.
It's like this, though. You know, every now and then that weird team's got your number somehow.
Oh, for sure.
Like Ole Miss.
For sure.
You know, but sure. one thing I want to bring up, Kirby had said, how is it that NCAA basketball gets this right and we still cannot? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I agree with him. I'm like, all right, let an AI or BCS type thing dictate the 12 best teams. And then conference championship winners within reason.
Yeah.
Within reason. If your conference championship winner is 8-4 or 9-3, no. Get them out.
Right.
You know, not pissing on Clemson and what they did. But you know, I think they reformat it next year. I really do, because you got so many people in an outrage.
Right.
You screw it up 2 years in a row.
Right.
And ultimately, I'm okay with every team on this list. I mean, I really am.
Yeah, by the lay of the land, they didn't get it wrong.
They didn't really get it wrong.
They told us how they were going to do it, and they actually did it this way. But I think when you look at a Boise State with a bye and Arizona State with a bye, you have a team like SMU and Indiana kind of hanging around. You just wonder, are these really the 12 best teams in the country? Or did we come up with a format to make sure that a conference champion can never be left out again because we messed up by leaving FSU out, who was undefeated?
Right. I mean,
you kind of wonder if those...
part of it. That's part of it.
Yeah.
Definitely part of it. I mean, honestly, if you would have went off of not just the strength of schedule thing or whatever that is, if you would have went off of every statistic, the BCS probably still would have handed you Florida State at the 4.
Yeah.
They probably would have.
Undefeated conference champion in the ACC. What? I mean, period on the sentence. Nothing further.
That's where the human bias comes in. Oh, we took y'all out because Jordan Travis was injured.
Right.
What? We won a ACC championship with nobody at the quarterback position. We won it off of Wildcat formation alone.
Right. So you're telling me subjectivity outweighs the fact that I actually performed and put out an undefeated.
At least let the players go dance and try.
Yep.
You know, even if they would have gotten smacked by Michigan, you know, I'm not even going to go there.
Right. Right. Well, before we get out of here, man, let's predict this bracket now that it's actually in front of us. We'll just take it from the top and go over Clemson or Texas.
Hook 'em.
Yeah, I'll say hook 'em as well. Texas is at home. Let's not forget, guys, this first round on the far left of the bracket, everyone at the bottom of their matchup is the home team. Tennessee or Ohio State?
Josh Heupel said they want to go play in some snow. He said it snows in Knoxville too. It gets cold there too. So I'm gonna take the Vols, man.
Taking Tennessee, yeah, that's definitely going to be the matchup of the weekend. I think Clemson and
Texas. My favorite matchup.
Clemson and Texas is going to be probably the second closest one. I'm going to take Tennessee for the sole fact that they're at home. They got to make up for that stinker against Michigan. They're not. I mean, they missed the Big Ten last time.
Are they not going to Columbus? I thought they were going to Columbus.
Yeah, they do. They do. Yeah. They had the Michigan game at home. Last time they were seen on the football field. That's how they played. They didn't get to play for the Big Ten, so I got Ohio State taking this one for sure. All right, SMU or Penn State?
Penn State. They showed some,
they showed some heart against Oregon, man.
Yeah, they showed some grit against Oregon, and they tried. And Drew Aller, man, he was playing his ass off. So they got a good quarterback. I think they win that.
Yeah, Drew Aller really impressed me. I mean, really, really impressed me how he played over the weekend. I'm going to take Penn State as well. Indiana or Notre Dame?
As much as I love the Cinderella story of Indiana, Notre Dame's going to take care of business.
Yeah, I'll have Notre Dame taking care of business too in basically the Indiana Bowl. So we'll have Notre Dame against Georgia, Penn State against Boise State. You'll have Tennessee at Oregon. I'll have Ohio State and Oregon, and then we're both taking Texas, who will be against Arizona State. So we'll start from that matchup there. Texas or Arizona State?
As much as I would like to see the Sun Devils pull it out, I don't think they do. I think Texas is pissed and on a revenge tour.
Yeah, Texas is going to go on to the semifinals. All right, I'll take Texas as well. So we'll have Texas in the semis, and then you've got you'll have Tennessee and Oregon. Who you taking there?
Oregon. They're the best team.
Yeah, I'll take Oregon as well. So we're going to have an Oregon-Texas semifinal, even though we're differing on the Tennessee-Ohio State outcome. So Oregon-Texas in the semifinals. We got Penn State and Boise State.
Penn State. As much as I want to choose Boise State, because I think they could actually make a case and, play hard against them. But I'm going to take Penn State. I liked what I saw against them, against the best team in the country.
Yeah.
I'm going to stick by that pick.
Yeah. I'm so tempted to take Boise State, but I'm right there with you. Penn State has played a hell of a
Boise State played Oregon close as well, so it's a really hard decision to make.
They did. I think I've liked overall. I think Penn State, despite how they've played in some big games this year, I think what they've got overall, they've got more to bring to the table, especially offensively. So I'll take Penn State as well, and then Notre Dame and Georgia.
Go Dogs.
Yeah, go Dogs as well. So we'll have Georgia and Penn State, Oregon and Texas. I will take Oregon in an amazing game against Texas.
It's going to be explosive. I'm going to take Oregon as well.
Yep, and then I would take Georgia over Penn State, which I think would be a great game as well. So it looks like the inevitable outcome, Alan, is Georgia and Oregon.
We're going to get that rematch from a couple years back.
I remember when that was to open the year.
Yeah.
I think that was the year that Georgia won the national championship. They won the first one.
Yep.
They had
it was either that or the second one. I can't remember which one it was.
I want to say it was the first one.
I know they beat Bo Nix for sure.
Yep. Remember they beat Bo Nix at Auburn, and then they beat Bo Nix at Oregon. So it looks like just the undeniable outcome. I mean, we have now seen 5, 6 potential brackets, 4 or 5 potential brackets, and Oregon has been at the end of every single one. They are without question the best team in college football. Ole Miss was dancing in there for a second when they beat Georgia, but now with Georgia back at the 2 seed with the first round bye, it just seems undeniably that
Shot
Georgia and
themselves in the
Oregon are
foot.
going to meet up. I will always take my dogs in that one. I would not be surprised if Oregon won because they are just absolutely unbelievable. But the way that Georgia has been tested this year, it's hard to, as a fan, of course, not be able to pull for them. Before we pull this off the screen, who do you think could be the biggest underdog? Like an Arizona State, an SMU, an Indiana.
The
Who do you?
biggest underdog in this bracket?
Yeah, like the sneakiest. Let me rephrase that. The sneakiest team that could go on and win a national championship out of this bracket.
Oh, that's Arizona State to me.
You think so?
Yeah, I think so, man. Because look, they they're getting better every week. Every
Yeah.
time you see them, they're getting better and better, and they have
Yeah.
a good head coach in Kenny Dillingham.
Right.
So they're a very disciplined team. They're decent on all sides. So it wouldn't, like I said, I so desperately hope that something throws a wrench in this.
Yeah.
Like I want an upset. I want to. Oh my god, I can't believe that. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
that's what makes this sport so fun. But
Mm-hmm.
inevitably, I think it's Georgia, Oregon, and I'm gonna take the Ducks by like 3.
Yeah.
It'd be retardedly close.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I think my underdog would be either Clemson or Penn State.
I like it.
I think they could be I think they could be a couple of teams that can make it to the end. Don't know if that'd be our matchup exactly, but we've got a hell of a 12 team, man. We've got an amazing college football playoff initial 12 team season to look forward to. I'm pumped. I can't wait. I think the Dogs have as good a chance as anybody to make
Oh
it. I
yeah,
think
for
Oregon
sure.
is without question going to be there. I'd be shocked if someone derails them. And we just got matchups across the board, man, and it's an absolutely great thing to see. Glad we had the chance to chop up about that SMU and Alabama point. I do think we'll see some changes within the next year or so, maybe
Oh yeah.
even right after the playoffs are over. We've already got the discussion, and maybe we could even bring something to the table about how we could maybe fix the college football playoffs. That was episode 83 of the NFL with AJL and also the double A with bringing you college football every single week. As always, before we get out of here, y'all please make sure to like and share the stream wherever you may be watching. Subscribe on YouTube. Help us get to 1,000 subs so we can activate the full monetization of the show and bring you guys even better content. If you want to donate with a super chat, super thanks, super like in the comments on YouTube, please do that as well. Hit the bell so you never miss a post. That QR code is every bit of social media and podcast content at the NFL with AJL on all social platforms. Tell someone about the show. Please share the stream before we get out of here. Leave a comment wherever you may be watching us live, or if you're watching the full show after the fact. We will be back with another episode of the NFL with AJL, of the double A on the podcast to bring you college football every single week. We love you guys, need you guys, and we will see y'all